Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of TrueNAS Tech Talk. Hope you all enjoyed your week off there. I know I had a little bit of relaxation time over the weekend. Hope you did as well, Chris.
Absolutely. Looking forward. We got another 3-day weekend coming up here in the US and right on the verge of releasing some new software. So a good weekend.
That's excellent. Yeah, on that subject of that new software, we got a couple quick reminders today. So especially we have the apps update deadline. So that is June 1st. That is coming for especially those of you still on Dragonfish, so 2404 and earlier. We do have some updates on that new Fangtooth update, which is 2504.1. We're going to take a little bit of a peek into Goldeye, I think, as well, Chris. We got some details on that we're going to share.
Yeah. We got a lot going on today to talk about, so we should probably just jump right into it. And, the first thing you mentioned, of course, is the apps reminder. We've said it multiple times. We'll say it one more time to remind folks. June 1st is Flag Day for apps. Really, it's June 2nd is when we'll push it live because that's the Monday. We're not going to do that to you on a Sunday. Nobody likes that. But again, we got to remind folks about 20% of folks running Electric Eel have upgraded to the 2410.2.2, which has kind of the native apps and IP addressing support. So you get that seamless upgrade experience. There's still folks running out on Dragonfish. Again, your window's running out. Doesn't mean you can't upgrade in the future. You just got to redeploy your apps, and nobody loves that. But this change is coming. So if you have time and cycles, get upgraded soon.
Yeah. For those of you who aren't using apps on TrueNAS, if you're just using TrueNAS for your SMB file share or iSCSI for block, I mean this stuff doesn't affect you, but it is kind of a good idea to periodically do those updates. We do put more than just single fixes in each one of them. Usually, you're going to get you're going to get bug fixes, you're going to get new features, functionality. Maybe we sneak some security fixes in there just to keep you and your data safe. So take that time to do those little upgrades, but definitely if you're running apps, make sure you've updated by that June 1st deadline. Otherwise, we will probably see a good chunk of users, they're on Reddit, they're going to be on forums, they're going to be on Discord or any other kind of social media. If you see somebody jumping up and saying, hey, suddenly all my apps aren't updating anymore, probably the first thing we want to do is give them a little hand, help them out, and just say, hey, did you get that 2410.2.2 update that they pushed out? It's specifically designed to fix this issue, get you ready. And by the way, now you can do single IP per app and all this cool networking stuff as well. So
absolutely. And bonus points if you can just drop a little link to these videos as well. So you can say, hey, if you're a listener to this podcast, you're a little bit more informed and might catch these things well in advance. So yeah, little shameless plug for us here.
Yeah. do a little of that guerrilla marketing.
Absolutely. So, okay. Speaking of new, shiny, exciting things, we also got the first update to Fangtooth is preparing to launch. So 2504.1 is coming out next Tuesday, the 27th. So right after we get back from that Monday holiday here in the US. Lots of important fixes in this release. This is what's preparing Fangtooth for kind of wider enterprise deployment on our TrueNAS Enterprise side. So on the community side, of course, already a handful of fixes in this for instances. We have a pretty important NFS fix we pulled from upstream Linux kernel that can cause some occasional NFS client hangs waiting for a long, I think like a 15-minute TCP timeout or something ridiculously long, when it should drop immediately and reestablish connection. So that's a really good fix. We got that going in. All in all, we ended up with 129 fixes merged into this release. So that's pretty significant. We're eager to get it out into folks' hands as soon as possible. And again, not all those fixes are relevant for every use case. Some are very targeted specifically at enterprise security things or specifically for instances, but it's a good mix. So even if you're running in traditional NAS storage mode, you probably want to get this just for the NFS fix alone.
Yeah. And like we said, it's good to sort of keep yourself updated. Make sure that you're getting, the latest functionality, the latest security fixes. Mm-hmm. Some of our users are saying, I'll wait behind. Well, that's great, but just don't wait too long, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll, of course, update the software status page in the coming weeks as well and just kind of reflect where it's at that point. So if that's what you're keying off of, great. Keep an eye on the software status page in the next few weeks and you'll know when it's time to jump. So looking ahead, though, people have asked us about Goldeye. We've had some questions, people saying they love hearing us talk about what's coming down the road and kind of demystifying and predicting the future. So folks specifically have asked about what instances might look like when it moves out of the experimental status that it's currently in for Fangtooth, which, that's a valid question. we got a massive Jira ticket and Epic with a whole bunch of sub tickets, tied into that already. I'll try and give you some of the highlights, but there's a whole slew, probably too many to go through here. And so let's call out some of the more interesting ones, Chris. So first up, I went and just grabbed a summary, kind of the top 8, I think. There's a whole slew of improvements around USB and PCIe device pass-throughs to your VMs. That's going to be cool. Lots of people will leverage that. Enhanced ISO management. So better ways of not only being able to manage ISOs after you've uploaded, but also if you've uploaded ISOs to elsewhere on your pool, say you use SMB or NFS or already have a directory with all your ISOs. I actually mean ISOs, really.
We actually do mean your Linux ISOs here, folks.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone has a very large repository of those, so I'm told. So now you'll be able to select those from whatever directory you've uploaded to on your pool.
Yeah, it's weird. I can actually use that the proper way for once. But anyway, controls for setting priority on bootable drives for your VMs as well. So you can go and select alternative disks to boot from. Things like arbitrary MAC address assignment for your Mac VLAN networks that you use for instances. That's important. We had some folks say, oh, well, I do IP address assignment via DHCP on my router, and I want to put my MAC address in that. Fine. Cool.
That one's actually the weird use cases I've seen is people are saying I'm running this legacy software on my TrueNAS in a virtual machine, and how does it specify its license? Well, it keys off the MAC address of the network card. So now you can arbitrarily specify that MAC address and say, hey, now I can just migrate this VM around wherever I want, and the licensing's still going to work.
Yeah, no, that's an important one. Glad to see that land. We also have some things landing for specifying the VM operating system type. So what that means is you'll have a drop down where you can say this is a Linux or this is a Windows or a BSD or whatever. And then in the background, it's automatically applying the right, batch of settings that are more suitable for that kind of client OS. So that's
this is like your threading updates, handling CPU emulation types. I know that was a challenge for some users. They'd say, why is my Windows performance so poor? And it was doing like double mitigations of the Spectre and Meltdown things that just absolutely tanked your Windows performance in a VM, especially if you did something like tried to apply BitLocker in a VM. It was just, you would get down to like 10% of what your expected performance will be. So hopefully we'll be able to turn on some of those things like the default threading behavior, the Hyper-V enlightenments that QEMU and KVM can do for you.
Just makes it all more automatic and seamless for you as an end user. You don't have to puzzle it out, which is great. Also, some good fixes have landed in Goldeye for memory pressure handling from Arc under heavy QEMU load. That was an interesting one where Arc wasn't releasing fast enough in all instances where QEMU needed memory. That's actually a really good one. We're going to merge that one back to Fangtooth. It won't be in the .1, it'll be in the .2. But that's an important one. And then in addition, we have the usual slew of things we've mentioned on previous podcasts, like being able to import and export your disk images, import your VMDKs or your VDIs, that good kind of stuff, be able to set up backups of the native disk volumes, all that good stuff, attach new volumes kind of to VMs on the fly, detach. There's just a whole slew of things. Again, it's a pretty large epic and growing at this point of things we're going to get in that makes that feature more what we'd consider enterprise ready and hardened and polished and more what we envision long-term that the feature is going to look like. And because no feature is ever truly done, you're always improving and evolving it. So that'll be for Goldeye. And then when we get into Icefish, in spring of next year, probably a whole nother slew of enhancements. So good stuff.
I think you jumped a letter. Icefish is our fall 26 release. We got to sneak half moon in there first.
Half moon. Sorry, did I reveal the code name too early there?
It's
Icefish for the upcoming fall.
That's why you listen to the podcast, so you can be in the know and figure out what code names we're going to let slip accidentally on our podcast here.
I'm already thinking 12 months out. That's right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's clearly what it is you've been spending a lot of time looking through our new versioned API reference site there, Chris. How's that for a segue? Let's talk about that one.
So let's get into that. Before we get into the API, I want to show off actually the app site, which we talked about a few weeks back, a little while ago. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up on the screen here, if you don't mind, Chris. Let's present that.
Yeah, I thought I staged that one pretty well, and now he's just gone and rug pulled me on it.
So fumbled it.
We're going to look at the apps first, folks. That's fine. I mean, that's what you're looking at.
We'll start there. We'll start with the oldest thing first, and we'll work our way up to what just launched. So we've brought this up on the screen here. Again, this launched several weeks ago, but it's still important. Some people are just discovering it for the first time. We thought it would be worthy of a quick little demo here.
Yeah,
But
for those of you who happen to be listening to us on audio only, we do a video podcast as well. It's on YouTube. Please come check it out so you can actually see what Kris is showing you on the screen in front of you, rather than just hearing us narrate over it.
Yep. And since you can't see my browser address bar, this is apps@truenas.com if you want to go explore it on your own. But more or less what we've done is we've created some new microsites where you can go and get more information about TrueNAS, how to use it, and in this specific case, how to deploy apps or what apps are available. There's a whole catalog here, which is updated dynamically several times a day. This is keying off of our public apps repositories and building it on the fly. If you're interested, it's using Hugo in the back end. All this is open source. You're welcome to go look at it. There's no real secrets here, but it's a pretty powerful site. Think of it as your apps marketplace on the web, right? But what's really cool is not only do we have sections for like our featured apps, you have some sorting options here below. And we also show you which apps are currently most active in the community. So again, these are active deployments, not legacy deployments. There's a lot of people obviously running Plex. I don't think that's really any big surprise here, but Jellyfin isn't too far behind. And then, of course, Tailscale, one of my personal favorites, Image. Nice to see that on the list. And then you can go on down the list here of apps with, 10,000 plus kind of deployments. You could change, we could do, show us the top 50 apps here. Again, good stuff if you're trying to get an idea of what's popular to run on TrueNAS, because that also gives you a sense of which ones are the most mature, because there's just more people testing and running them. And then if you want to see what's new and upcoming and exciting, you can sort by newest as well and see some of the latest things that have just landed in the app catalog without having to go fire up your TrueNAS app interface and kind of browse it there after logging in. This is a great way to just kind of keep an eye on what's going on and what might pique your interest to say, I'd like to go try deploying that on TrueNAS now. There's some interesting apps in here, but let's go ahead and click into a couple of the obvious ones. So we'll just start with Jellyfin. What the heck? We go to Jellyfin, you get your screenshots, you get some information. You also get some cool stats here, like when it was last updated, so you can see how kind of fresh it is. We have information on the specific version of Jellyfin with links to the changelog. If the app publishes a changelog that we can link to, that's where we're going to do that. And this is something I wanted to call out too. At the bottom, we have these resources sections, and these are community docs. We have project docs that we've written. This is where things that people have written on, hey, here's how I deploy it. Here's custom setup. Some apps can get pretty complicated. Not all apps are as user-friendly as others. So sometimes they do need a little bit of hand-holding. And this is where the community is able to contribute these things, which will land in this app marketplace, as you will. So if a new one gets added, it'll show up here, bottom right corner. But you can click into this and it'll take you over to the resources section with details on how to first get deployed with Jellyfin, for example. That's kind of exciting. But then also, if you're just new to TrueNAS and new to the whole apps ecosystem in general, there's also some nice getting started information here. Initial setup, some tutorials on how to secure apps. I think this one might link to some resources that I helped write on how to secure it with VPN technology, so you're not punching holes in your firewall. Again, good information if you're an apps person for your home lab. And then some other foundations articles, just details on how apps work, understanding the terminology, the technology behind it. And then, of course, the more gory reference details if you want to really get into it, right? And then last but not least, contributing. It's, again, an open source repo. There's no reason you can't, get a little inspired and go contribute something. So if there's a cool app you'd like to see in the app catalog, that's a thing. You can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say, I just installed Image over the past weekend, just trying to get a copy up for everybody to use. So I'll be following sort of your tutorial about getting it securely exposed using sort of one of the Cloudflare tunnels and making sure my family can dump all their photos in there.
Yeah, no, it's nice. I got a domain. I've got my own certs. I got all that good stuff set up. So at home, or just on the network, we can go and, hit a certain site. Boom, it comes up. People can log in. And then it also works with Tailscale for remote. So when I'm out on the road, I can still reach my image and upload photos I'm taking if I'm traveling, all that good stuff. So that's kind of the apps marketplace in a nutshell. But let's also look at the new API microsite that's launched. This is the one that just went live in the past week or so. This is exciting. It's been a long time coming. TrueNAS has had a pretty full-featured API for a long time now, but the docs for that have historically been available in product. So you'd have to go log into your TrueNAS interface, then bring up the API section, click on the docs link, and then kind of browse those from the TrueNAS itself. But we've gone ahead and spun up a microsite here where we're now publishing these. So you can go to this api.truenas.com site. There's some links and information here to find out more about this. But what's kind of nice is we're building basically all the tagged versions of the APIs, so we can pick our version here. So 25.10.0, this is what's upcoming for the fall. That's basically a nightly doc at this point. It might be changing, but we can go back and say, okay, let's look at something a little bit more baked at this point. So 2504.1, that's the release getting ready to go out on Tuesday. It'll take you to the API specifications. And as you can see, if you're into this kind of thing, it's JSON RPC2, which is pretty well understood. But we have all the information here where you can dig in and get details on how to communicate with the API, examples, all that good stuff. But then what you're probably really here for is, once you get past the kind of initial introduction, is what APIs do I have available on my TrueNAS? And this is where it gets kind of fun. Like, you have your authentication methods for how do I first log in to the API, but then what kind of things can I do? Well, here's a little hint, and I guess most folks know this, but I'm going to say it because maybe not everyone is caught on. Everything you do in the UI for TrueNAS is an API call. There's no magic or secret sauce. Anything you're seeing our TrueNAS user interface do, you can also query directly via the API and do yourself. So that means you can script things, you can do all kinds of good stuff. But this is where you would come in here and take a look. For example, I think, let's see here, maybe people want to look at datasets. Okay, yeah, pool dataset query. Let's take a look at here. Examples of, hey, I'm querying this. What do I get back? What options? All that good stuff. What gets returned? Again, very helpful.
Yeah, you can get things like programmatically seeing the capacity used on your array and map it out in a neat little dashboard. Mm-hmm. I know we had, I think we had a couple users already sort of plumbing this API, looking for things. They were fixing a couple integration plugins for some other software. They're saying, hey, something changed in 2504, and I just pasted and say, well, here's our full reference. Go dig into them. And they said, oh, wow, this is way better than, trying to scrape and parse HTTP responses. Let's just throw that at this query at it, and we'll get nicely formatted JSON back and easily
It's nice. It's a nice specification too, Chris. And one of the things I think we mentioned, gosh, it's been a while now, in an earlier podcast, we talked about the difference between like REST versus, say, JSON RPC over WebSocket. Yep. But this is one of the coolest features, is WebSockets are kind of a real lightweight, persistent connection. It's still tunneled over HTTP, HTTPS, all that good stuff. But what's interesting is it's two-way and asynchronous. So you can subscribe and get events back. So you can have your connection, it's running, and then TrueNAS is sending you updates or notices or events basically in real time as it happens. You're not having to write a script that just polls constantly, which is annoying and creates load, and you got to log in every time. That's very aggravating. But this is how you get all those really responsive things in the UI, where alerts just pop up or certain things happen on the screen. Your apps show their status kind of in real time as they're transitioning from, stop to updating to running or whatever they happen to be doing. That's all very asynchronous, event driven. And that's the way it should be. That's modern.
Rather than the equivalent of basically refreshing the page every however many seconds to try and get your update.
Which is very annoying and puts load unnecessarily on the server, when we can already just tell you, oh, here's where it's at. We'll let you know when it changes.
This is the kind of stuff that excites developers.
It does. So again, but I imagine a lot of our listeners are fairly technical, so hopefully this is interesting for you, and we'll be curious to see what people use it for down the road.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Okay. Thank you for the demo. We now return to your regularly scheduled audio-friendly podcast here.
That is right. So yeah, that's right. You can hop back over to Spotify or wherever you listen to your audio. Okay, so what do we got next here? Something else we wanted to announce today and kind of mention. It's out there, so it's not really a secret, but there's a Incus repo we have on our GitHub side that we have forked, and you might see a branch that's been actively being worked on. We're working on adding support to upstream Incus for a native TrueNAS driver. So this is coming sooner rather than later. You'll see the pull request into Incus here in the coming days. It's really close now. And for those who haven't played with this, let me just fill you in. So Incus itself, neat little hypervisor. It's what we're using. Hypervisor controlling tool, I guess I should say, management layer. It's the thing that does, LXC instances, QEMU, all that good stuff. We're using it on the TrueNAS, but as a standalone tool for setting up a cluster and basically creating a cool virtualization compute section or compute side of your business. It's really cool. It has this pretty robust ZFS driver in it today. that was actually one of the things that first had us looking at it, was like, oh, this has got pretty cool ZFS support out of box. So this effort, though, is to take some of that ZFS driver, and the effort's headed up by somebody from Forum fame, our own Captain Stux. They've been working on adapting that driver to make TrueNAS over the network possible as a storage target for Incus. So what does that mean? That means TrueNAS, it's using iSCSI for block storage provisioning for your Incus cluster, which is doing your LXE and QEMU backed VMs. And because the driver is TrueNAS specific, it's talking over our APIs, doing all that WebSocket, JSON, RPC, good stuff. And it also understands that the remote TrueNAS side is ZFS, as opposed to just saying I'm doing NFS and I don't understand what the file system is on the remote side, which means Incus, when you're running it with this driver, it's able to do all the nice functionalities that you could do as if you were running with a local ZFS pool. So for example, fast cloning of disks or images, right? Being able to take snapshots, all this good stuff that, you know, ZFS can do if it's locally attached. But then if you're doing it over iSCSI, the protocol itself doesn't have those capabilities baked in. You know, the driver's having to go do some of the heavy lift and talk to the TrueNAS and say, hey, I'm about to clone this VM. I'd like you to go ahead and do the equivalent ZFS commands on the TrueNAS side, make the clone, put it here. And then on the Incus side, it means those operations are just fast, instant. It's not having to actually do like block copies to a different iSCSI target and take forever. It's good stuff. So we're excited to see that go live.
Yeah, it'll be integrated at a higher level. So instead of having to sort of do it at two stages of, you know, clone your storage and then point your VM to it, this starts to enable functionality where you just say, hey, clone this machine for me, put it back on the same TrueNAS storage, and Incus will just know on its own how to do that. It'll say, well, I know how to clone stuff on TrueNAS. I know how to provision new iSCSI LUNs on TrueNAS. What do you want to name your new VM? Okay, that's all the information I need from you. I'll be right back. And presto, you get your new VM stood up in just a couple seconds.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we're looking forward to getting that out there. This would be the equivalent of folks who maybe have used CSI drivers on the Kubernetes side. Incus would be an alternative to that. So again, you'll see that land on the Incus side here before too long. We'll have a pull request open, and looking forward to working with Upstream to see if we can get that cleaned up and in.
Excellent.
Okay. One last thing I got to throw out here. So this last week's been fun. My son made me grab Expedition 33 on my my Linux gaming box. Holy crap, that's a great game. People should check that out. It's like that weird mix of Final Fantasy and Zelda. I don't know how they do it. It gives me all those vibes, even a little Mass Effect in places. I'm loving it. So I have to throw it out there though, because it just tickles me that I can play a brand new like AAA title on my Ubuntu desktop on day one.
I've heard a lot of buzz about that game, but I have not had a chance to play it. I've been really busy with, you know, the snow finally melting up where I am, and, you know, being able to get outside and touch grass again. So I've been stepping away from the keyboard, but I'll have to take a look at it if it's got your sort of ringing endorsement. And like you said, it's one more thing that seems to be running well on Linux. And boy, Microsoft will not stop nagging me to upgrade every machine I have to Windows 11. And no, I'm still not doing it. Thanks.
I saw they just pushed a big SteamOS update not too long ago, and it's like, okay, for running SteamOS on bare metal, and I don't think I would change my desktop over. I'm perfectly happy with it with Ubuntu and just Steam loaded on there. That is my SteamOS in many ways, so I'm content, and stuff just kind of works. So again, hats off to that community. It was not too long ago that gaming on Linux was really a pain in the rear, and it's gotten quite good.
I think that's going to be more so for the people who want to put it in their living room. You know, like again, I keep saying, when are we getting the Steam consoles here, Valve? Like, give us something with a little bit more beef. Let it tuck under there. I mean, but then that's one more thing you got to pre-order. I know you mentioned you got to switch to pre-order, so now you have to go pre-order a Steam box. But
I guess if you have SteamOS, the software, I mean, a console is just you going and buying a small box that you can put in your living room and don't think looks like an eyesore, I suppose. Put the software on it and you're good to go.
That's the biggest challenge I always have with trying to find a PC to stick in my living room is, you know, hey, if anybody's got recommendations for really cool looking cases that would fit nicely in a home theater, hey, drop them down in the comments. I'm looking to go shopping.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, we got some questions now. Let's go for it.
Yeah, we got a great little rapid fire series of questions from a Greg here, and he just wrote in. He said, "I don't usually participate in any sort of social aspect of the shows I tune into, but it looks like this is an exception." He says, "I think T3 podcast is exactly what the community needs." He said he's binge listened to every single episode after he found that big Incus deep dive. He loves that he's getting a peek into sort of why we're making decisions, how we handle the feature request processes, and how enhancing the UI and the user experience works internally. He says we're very approachable, and it's great for those who might not have the time to go and listen to all the monthly OpenZFS meetings. So, hey, we appreciate you tuning in, Greg. We really we're glad to have you here listening.
Hey, those meetings are interesting, but yeah, they can be a little technical and dry. So I get it. But they're good if you're into going to that deep.
Yeah. And that is another question we had from somebody else. They said, "Hey, are you guys ever going to do those long form episodes you talk about?" And it's like, we'll get to it. It may not land on the podcast. We may just link out to our main channel and say, "Hey, if we're going to do an hour-long reference doc on something, we want to make sure it's some good material everybody can use." But let's get into the rapid fires from Greg here. So he's got a couple. He says, "Hey, automatic config backups." He says, "What's the recommended method for this outside of manually going in and having to do UI downloads all the time?" He says, so he's been doing it through the manual downloads. He can't really find an easily supported way to just regularly schedule this up in the documentation. So, I mean, I think we have an answer for this one already, Chris, and that would be
our TrueCommand companion product, which you can download. It's free for up to 50 drives. That's one of the features, is it will basically monitor your configuration database, and as changes are made, it goes ahead and backs them up, stores them in its own offsite location. That way you can easily pull them back if you tragically lose your boot device.
Exactly. Hey, speaking of boot devices, that's the next question. He says, "Could you demystify why it is the boot pool has to be a physically dedicated disk?" And that's kind of one of them. Is it's the idea of sort of the ease of upgrades of doing it, and sort of the fungibility of that device, where you say, "Hey, if my boot device happens to have kicked the bucket, I know I haven't lost any data." He said, he sees people who've done it in the community where they're, partitioning things up, and they don't want to use the full size of like these 1 terabyte SSDs they buy for their internal mounting. It's kind of the idea that with a boot device, you're sort of building it to purpose. You don't have to pick something that's as screamingly high performance as like a log device, or even something with the capacity of the rest of your pool. It's just kind of the way we've designed it, Chris, I guess.
It needs to be that way. You want that layer of separation between, system boot data and then your actual data, like the stuff that you get in trouble if you lose or goes horribly awry. Also the performance considerations, because there are things that you'll do which need to go ahead and hit the boot device, updates, logging, auditing, all that good stuff. You just don't necessarily always want that load to end up on the pool if you can help it. So there's reasons, a lot of good historical reasons, but again, and a lot of people who homebrew their systems just have like, "Oh, I have this old drive I'll use for boot." That's fine. We want to allow that so you can then put your money in the actual data storage devices.
Yeah. All right. And then the next one, he says, "Is there going to be anything in place to allow for remote unlocking of data sets?" This is talking about, encryption, data arrest. He says, it's kind of a pain if you have to log in, type a key manually after a restart, or especially if you're doing this as like an iSCSI SAN for virtual machines. So he says, is there any sort of mechanism for automatic and safely unlocking the data sets? And well, in this case, we do have a feature for that, but it is a TrueNAS Enterprise feature. So that's what it's using KMIP, which is the Key Management Interoperability Protocol. That basically lets you have an external key server on your network. The TrueNAS machine will authenticate to it, sort of a mutual authentication scenario, and then it unlocks the data set. But that is a TrueNAS Enterprise feature.
Yeah, setting up a KMIP server can be pretty challenging as well. I wouldn't recommend it for most home labs. That's a very enterprise type functionality. But yeah, that is there. And if that's something you need, especially if you're using it in more of an enterprise setting, like, give us a shout.
Yeah, we're happy to help you get going with that. And then the last question in this list from Greg was, are there any plans on integrating a native file browser into TrueNAS? So he says it's, it could be useful looking around the file system, trying to find lost files for the users where they go, "Oh, I don't remember where I put it." He says, there's different things you can do. Like you could have a full admin account on your SMB share. But he says, is there anywhere for those who aren't maybe comfortable doing like an SSH in there and using a find command or midnight command or something like that?
There's a couple apps that already more or less provide that. They're not the best because they don't really understand that they're on TrueNAS and they don't expose all the TrueNAS bells and whistles. So that is kind of on my wish list of features we need to bring to the table. And I've talked about this on the forums. That has to happen at some point. Nothing to announce yet as far as the ETA, but definitely that would be something I would love to see make an appearance here in the near future.
So the answer is there are plans. There are plans at this point. There's no release date, but there are plans.
Well, I mean, you can imagine how useful it would be. Like, oh, I can log in, I can view my snapshots from a web interface, I can view ACLs, I can do other kind of cool stuff without having to go jump on a Windows box and fire up SMB. So it would be helpful. Like I said, there's definitely a need there.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks for submitting sort of the rapid fire questions, Greg. We appreciate it. And once again, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you've enjoyed sort of your binge listening and binge watching. So on that note, I think that actually wraps it up for today, Chris. So we're going to be back again next week to find out how people are doing with that new point release for Fangtooth at 2504.1. It will be, the last one is going to be pretty much our last warning to say, hey, if you're on Dragonfish and you want to do those auto app updates, please make sure you get in there, upgrade to 24.10 if you don't want to jump to Fangtooth yet. If you're already on 24.10 and you're running apps, make sure you get that little .2 maintenance release so you can start using all of that per IP or per app IP addressing goodness that we're going to drop just at the start of June. Thanks for tuning in again. As always, please do those usual YouTube things. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Please ring the notification bell so you can listen to this as soon as we upload it. Drop us a message in the comment section. Have some great conversations. Please keep submitting those questions in. Again, it's t3@truenas.com. We really enjoy reading all your questions, and we're going to promise to try and structure more of these in and answer them in the future. Thanks for listening, folks. And as always, have a great day.